I'm going to start with something from Twitter. Victoria says, in light of the current political affairs at the moment, do you think that social media has a positive influence? Abby?
A positive influence. I suppose in a way it's easier for you to sort of spread things that happen. I think social media can be a bubble, so like I always think of social media as a very left-wing bubble. So it's, if politics in reality reflected social media, it's all, Ed Miliband would have won the general election and Jeremy Corbyn will win every seat in 2020. But I think it can be a bubble. I think it does have a positive influence on political affairs. I could think, using the example of the Labour leadership election, I think a big part of sort of the Corbyn effect was that he had a really strong following of social media and everyone was sharing it and people were voting for him because they've heard about him on social media and seen other people talking about him. So I think it's good that it enables people to sort of spread a message, but at the same time, you're always going to get people who are going to spread sort of negative messages and mean messages on social media and sort of if someone's in a different political party to you, sort of have a go at them on social media, it can all get a bit negative, but I think in general it does have a positive effect.
You sort of touched on the idea of social media being a bit of an echo chamber, that if you're not aware of that, you can end up with a slightly warped perspective of what's going on, because you kind of, you choose the people that you hear on social media, and even without necessarily consciously doing it, you're assembling a group of people who think roughly what you think, and it kind of reinforces rather than challenges at times, I suppose, and then people are surprised when they are challenged. Do you think that's an issue, Dan?
Social media is completely neutral. I think we forget, Twitter quite often in the UK becomes a news story, and Twitter isn't the story. What's happened on Twitter is the story. The platforms are completely neutral. How we choose to use them is something we have to learn to do better, but they're fundamentally neutral. There's no bias in there.
How do you feel about the kind of what you see going on online, Laura, particularly in sort of, when stuff happens, when there's a big news event or political issue?
Well, I mean, just look at Piggate. I mean, I guess that's just a prime example. Like, I suppose, like, even people who aren't interested in politics or aren't, like, get involved and will tweet something and make, their opinion known, like, regardless of what that opinion may be. And I think sometimes, like, the danger is some people don't know enough about something, and, online, they don't know enough about it, and they can just put something out there that could be really stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people not knowing enough about stuff is a problem that's been there forever.
It's also a strength. I mean, it's also a strength.
Yeah.
That there is. If I'd have tried to come up with a coherent plan to start right clean-up, I couldn't have done. But actually, kind of almost not knowing enough is what lets you get on with it, because you can go, well, this seems like a really simple thing to do. Let's try this. British are great at being amateurs. We need to continue being amateur at things.
And do you think actually on that there's a kind of like informal like crowdsourcing element where you have all of these people sort of thinking about that problem, and you sort of say, well, this is a thing I think we can do, and then people are like, yeah, actually we might be able to do that, and therefore the group comes together and creates a bigger effect than you would have been able to on your own. Absolutely,
and the ability of collective creativity, of us sharing this common space to work together is huge. I mean, I'm about to start working in Penrith with the NHS, looking at how artists can apply creativity to problems that the NHS have with a group called Eden Arts. That's fantastic, because I will stick it straight on Twitter and people will start telling me where I've gone wrong or giving me good advice, guiding me to resources that I should look at.
We got any questions from the floor? Yes, gentleman down at the front here.
Hi everyone. Three great talks, by the way. Thank you. You're all kind of a consensus on the positive side of social media, but you described the dark side as the trolls and what have you. But there's also a darker side of the fact that you're in many ways being manipulated by the platform owners themselves, and that you're the fee fodder. The fact that I could track everyone that had an opinion about Ed Miliband and then serve an ad directly to those people that I think will be relevant to them. Social media is free, but because companies like Facebook are making billions on the back of your content.
That's fine. I'm happy with that. I make a nice living out of it. I worked out between 2010 and 2013, I worked out the return on investment for me using Twitter. And in that time, I tweeted, I think, about 110,000 times. And I made about £1 a tweet. So actually, I'm quite happy with that. That's a decent return for me. Yeah.
I guess it sort of goes into what we were talking about before. There's a privacy thing that maybe people aren't aware of, just how much of their personal data is being extracted and then sold on to,
I
not
personally
quite sure
think,
who.
like, as well, as I said, like, you've got people who are younger and younger on there. Do you really want a company like Facebook taking, like, data from, like, a 9-year-old and using it in there? Like, I think it can invade, like, I don't have a problem with it, but I think now that people are getting younger using it, the data collection, or whatever it is, needs to be, like, looked over.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of sort of what you gain out of it, I've gained. If I had never got on Twitter, I would never have these opportunities. I would never even really know what I wanted to do. I mean, how I got into politics was reading the news about it on Twitter and on watching it on TV, and sort of it was the technology side of it, and that's how I got into it. And so I would never have these opportunities. I would never have sat at a table eating lunch with Ed Miliband. I would never, have been walked up to David Cameron and have him ignore me. That would never happen to me. That would never happen to me if I'd never had Twitter. So for me, I mean, they can take out of it what they like, because I gained so much from it and I've profited so much from it personally, and it's made me so much more confident as well. So I just think about how much I've personally profited from it. And I just think, well, it's worth it, really, in the end.
Okay, any more? Yeah, gentleman here.
I'd like to suggest to Abby that you send a nice tweet to Louise Mensch.
I already have done, actually. I tried, and then she called me a whiny baby and told me I was being silly. So it didn't work, really. It didn't work. It doesn't work.
I think Louise Mensch will not be killed with kindness.
No. If we ignore her,
There's a couple of things that I wanted to pick up on, actually, in your talks. Laura, you said about how you can, going back to session 2, you sort of react in the moment on social media. And I wonder if you all think that that's an issue, because perhaps it means that we're limiting more thought-out responses. Like, I see a lot of, there are inevitably going to be very complex issues boiled down to a very, small number of characters on Twitter, and then people just leap on and say what they think. And there's stuff where I need to think about it for weeks before I have any idea of what I actually think about a situation. And I think that social media encourages the opposite of that. You just either go with the flow or just go with a knee-jerk response.
You don't have to. I mean, if you look at my...
No, I try not to, but it's difficult, isn't it? You see everyone else getting stuck in.
It is, but we just have to learn this stuff. 100 years ago, nobody knew how to cross the road when cars were driving down it. But we learn. We now accept that as normal. And I think we will. We'll learn the ways to do it. And it's sitting back. It's that mindfulness we heard about earlier. Hanging back, waiting, not feeling you have to comment on everything, but sitting and waiting. And also, I think, using your common sense, using your bullshit detector. Looking at things that go up and go, well, that just does not look real. That does not look like that. That's a real thing. So I'm not going to comment on that.
I'm glad you raised that point, because there are things that online and put on Twitter regularly purporting to be one thing that aren't. And it's actually very hard. So there was that thing where there was a picture of the House of Commons and it was empty, and I think it said that this is when MPs were discussing whatever. And people were like, this is disgusting because they should be. And it was from, 6 years ago, nothing to do with what it said. And it spread, it was a huge meme online. And there's no way of regulating that, really, is there?
There are a load of websites that will help you do it. Things like Snopes are really good. I mean, but also just apply some common sense half the time. During the riots, there was a photo going around of tanks on the streets of London.
Yeah.
And you looked at it and went, well, they don't look like British tanks, and that doesn't look like London. It turns out it was from Egypt.
Yeah.
Just
What's that pyramid?
Yeah, just look and think. It's not hard.
Yeah, look and think is a good sort of tagline for Twitter, actually, isn't it? Yeah. And the other thing was sort of, Abby, you're talking about trolls and how it sort of brings out the worst in people, and actually, those people that are vicious and mean online are probably not very nice people in reality. And I kind of wondered if that's true. Like, I've never seen any proof of that. Like, it feels right, doesn't it, that you wouldn't be that mean. But I kind of wonder if they're actually perfectly normal, nice people, and for some reason, it just, like this, gives them a facility to explore a dark part of their personality that they wouldn't normally use. I just wonder if anyone had any thoughts about that.
Yeah, I don't know really. I've never met any trolls personally.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
there's probably like one in here.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Who told me that my glasses
In the
would
darkest
fit?
corner.
Yeah, I don't know. I just for me, yeah, I just can't imagine ever like being nasty to someone in that way online. So the people who get sent death threats on social media and rape threats and things like that, and I just think you don't send that if you're a nice person. You don't send that if you help old ladies across the street. You don't send that if you spend every day trying to help people and you're just an inherently good person. So I don't know. I think there's just I can't find a way to explain it. I just think that sort of maybe some people feel like they have this anger that they want to express at random people online rather than in their real life.
I have met one, and the police have issued her the notice of harassment. And yeah, she's just a nasty person. And Twitter lets her do that, but she would be nasty anyway.
Do you think she would be doing it in real life if she wasn't doing it on Twitter?
Yeah, she lives in the same town as me, and she does. So yeah.
Good advert for Worthing today.
There's a question in the front.
Yes.
You said about how you have trolls and things like that, but do you think there are also risks of like social media, like you have things like Tumblr and websites that sort of romanticize mental illness, as well as like pro-anorexia sites and pro-bulimia and pro-ED and pro-self-harm and things like that? Do you think that also makes society selfish because there's people promoting these things and teaching young children and young girls and young boys how to get those sort of behaviors?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the sort of there's a lot of romanticization of mental illness. There's like in clothing, I think as well. I don't know if anyone's seen any examples of clothing, but there's clothing that says stuff like sort of stressed, depressed, and Benedict Cumberbatch obsessed or something, or there's like psycho, and that isn't mental illness isn't fashion. And I've seen it the way actually I found out about it, that it was highlighted on social media. So it is a way for people to spread negative ideas that young people who are susceptible to those ideas might then sort of take them on. But I also think it's a way to debunk those ideas, because if you're just being told that, say, in a classroom, there's no one else giving you an opinion saying, well, actually, this is wrong. Or social media, usually, if there is something negative that's happening, there's also someone saying, well, this is really bad. So there is an access point where you can access sort of where someone's telling you that's wrong, whereas I think in real life, in the classroom, you wouldn't necessarily get that.
I actually saw an article on this a couple of weeks ago, and the journalist was saying all you need to do is to go on Tumblr and update sort of a monochrome like photo with a quote about like depression or bulimia, and you'll be instantly like opened up to this community of people who do sort of glorify it, and it's so easy to get into it because I don't really know why, but yeah.
But on the other hand, I used to have a girlfriend who read Cosmopolitan, and her view of what she was going to achieve in life was completely unachievable because of that. So, those things will always be there.
Any more questions? Yes, up at the back here.
I'm actually doing a project based around this stuff, and I've done some research into it. Most of it does come down to social media. It seems to be Instagram and how girls are looking to be like the thinnest they can be. So I guess I want to ask is, could there be a way that social media could kind of stop this from happening, or a way to cap it so that younger people just don't get access to this so they can still use it?
So is there a way of kind of filtering that content?
But once we get into that, we're into censorship.
Yeah.
And if we say that's not allowed, then somebody else can say that's not allowed either. And before you know it, we've got a very closed down internet where we can only access the things that we're allowed to access. And we don't want that. We actually want, I think it's that crowdfunding thing earlier, we actually want the crowd to be able to sort out what's good and what's bad and filter it. That's a better method. Once you get into any degree of censorship, I think we're in real trouble.
Okay. Yeah, lady over this side here.
You've spoken about everyone on social media connecting. Some people don't have social media. What are your opinions? Like,
People exist.
I don't have Twitter. You said to use Twitter, so how do I get connected?
Get Twitter. It's
Yeah,
easy.
exactly. Just download the app.
Next. No, but no, it's a valid point. I think I occasionally get surprised when I talk about something that was massive on Twitter to friends, and they're like, "No, I didn't see it." I was like, "What do you mean you didn't see it?"
But also, I mean, it's something. It's still only something like 7% of the UK's population are using social media regularly. It's a tiny percentage. What's important, though, is that we who do use it can take that out of social media into the real world as well. My favourite photo from Riot Cleanup is of a row of very hipster types standing on iPhones with their brooms waiting to clean up, and in the middle of them all is a little old lady in her 70s, in her best pinny, with a pair of bright pink Crocs on and her dustpan and brush in her hand. Now, she wasn't on Twitter. She couldn't have been. But somebody told her. She saw her neighbours doing it, so she joined in. She found out about it. Twitter is a really useful tool for disseminating stuff so far, but we can tell our friends about it. We can spread the word. We can show people the stuff that we find out. We can be the kind of navigators through this stuff.
Is it vital, though, that we make sure that these movements on Twitter, so hashtags that blow up, have a real world impact to kind of justify them? Because there are times when you look at Get Cameron Out trended for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, and I feel like people thought, well, this is exciting. That has no effect, absolutely zero effect, but sort of gets people's hopes up in a way, depending on your political leaning.
Well, like I said in my talk, other people had talked about, oh, we should do something about the riots, but it was actually having a really clear, simple, help your local shop. One bin bag, dustpan and brush, really simple thing that meant it could do something useful. And I think we have to make Twitter and social media do useful things, not just talk about stuff.
Please give it up one more time for our fantastic speakers, Abby, Laura and Dan.